Aloha mai kako. Thank you all for being here. Liko really set the bar, so I'm hoping to, to do this justice. I recently returned home from New York City. I love the sights, the sounds, and the smells. Not so much the smells, but love the city. And it was kind of actually a homecoming of sorts for me. You see, in 2008, I moved there for graduate school to live for 2 years. And I'm born and raised here in Kaneohe, but of course I chose the farthest place to move, right? Away from home, 3,000 miles away from my family, away from everything I knew. So far, past Vegas, just very far. And moving there, I knew no one. I had no car, I had no family up there. I didn't even have a guarantee of a place to stay. My now husband, who was then my boyfriend, and I packed up all of our things. I think we took about 2 suitcases up with us to the city and moved to a place that was seemingly pretty different from our upbringings here in Kaneohe. You see, here in Kaneohe, I was surrounded by family. I was raised by a single mom who worked really hard. She was a factory worker at Poly Teas, and she gave up her education here at Windward so that she could afford to raise me. My grandmother supported her and helped to raise me and really taught me what it meant to be surrounded by love and by family. She cooked for us, and I still remember, every day at 5 p.m. smelling the Johnson & Johnson baby powder coming from her mu'umu'u as she was at the stove cooking and telling me, hey, go practice ukulele. And I have to practice for an hour because Royce Akuma's was on Saturday, and I had to make sure I showed I practiced. But whenever she cooked, it was always a really simple meal like corned beef and cabbage, pork and beans. Shout out to anybody who was raised on pork and beans, Vienna sausage and poi. And I remember her teaching me things like, how to kahi the bowl after you eat poi to keep it clean for the next person, or making sure, that we were taking care of each other. I learned the value of turning off the TV when grandma was outside with the rake, because if grandma's outside working, everybody's working, right? Here's where I was raised with family parties in the garage, Thanksgiving with turkey and chow mein, where the cranberry sauce tastes the best coming straight out of the can, right? By the way, in New York, I tasted it like the real style. I was like, no, it's out of the can, it has to have the spirals on the outside, right? And we got to drink real Pepsi because it was like a special treat. It was a real special occasion. Uncles, aunties, and cousins coming over, and I just remember everybody laughing and teasing each other after gathering in a circle in prayer. I remember piñatas hanging from the rusty hook in the garage and the dog running around licking everyone's plates. I was one of the youngest of all my cousins, so I got to be the first one to get the crack at hunting for Easter eggs, running around barefoot in the yard. And I still remember birthdays would involve quinoa and dobash from Kaneohe Bakery. My husband and I have a kind of a fight over which one was better, Kaneohe or Delight. So if you're a Delight fan, sorry, but Kaneohe Bakery family over here. And so I remember all of those things growing up. Castle High School's band it's right across the street from us. And so we would hear the sweet and sometimes awkward sounds of the band practicing. But as Knights, we would be so proud hearing our alma mater being practiced. And it was here where weekends were spent swimming in the crystal clear waters of Kailua Beach, or Windward Mall, where mom made the limits of her budget crystal clear. Here was where we learned the value of community, of going door to door, and cars and houses were left unlocked as people went door to door, selling beef jerky or Zippy's chili for yet another school fundraiser. So this was Kaneohe, my home. So as I sat there in my evening class on West 4th Street, and I had a picture of Kaneohe Bay on a bookmark in one of my books, and someone asked me, "Where's that?" I did not know how to describe Kaneohe. I didn't know how to tell them about this place. So I tried, and all it conjured up was pictures of Hawaii, right? With swaying palm trees and mai tais and girls in grass skirts. And I didn't know how to describe the swaying pua keni keni and the fragrance of pua melia that we're all so familiar with on May Day, and how that one time at Kaneohe Elementary, I got to be lady in waiting for Big Island, and I was so happy I made it. I didn't know how to describe the majestic green ko'olau or the boats at He'ea Pier. Or that one time my classmate Jared threw up on the long walkway at Kaneohe Elementary, and how all those memories are just etched in my mind. And I remember one time I wrote a paper about Native Hawaiians in the DOE. And my NYU professor wrote on my paper, "Come see me after class." And I went up to talk to her and she's like, "Who are Native Hawaiians?" How do you not know this? And at times I felt alone. I felt like an alien that had landed on the planet, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, and just being completely misunderstood. I clung to the Asian market selling medium grain rice and the one L&L in the financial district that sold spam musubi. They sold laulau too, but it was terrible. But I remember taking the musubi proudly with me to a Yankees game. And I just clung. I tried to find reminders of home. It felt, like the values that I had grown up with were just non-existent in this newfound place. On the subway, I smiled at a baby who did not smile back at me. And I just learned, you don't make eye contact. You either look above heads or you look down at your feet. To be safe was to keep to yourself. And if you didn't step into the elevator immediately, the doors were closing. I made the mistake in the beginning of answering. People would say, "How are you?" And they're looking back at me. Why was I answering? It's a greeting, not a question. I realized later on, though, that the value of family did exist in New York City. See, we were living in Brooklyn and we were working and living among Dominicans, Haitians, Puerto Ricans, African Americans, Italians, Jews, Chinese, who all also valued family. We were living in the basement apartment of a Hawaii girl's Chinese immigrant family in Brooklyn. And I remember shopping on 86th Street at the Chinese grocery markets and seeing families, pushing babies in strollers and running to make it on time for church or synagogue. There, having a sense of community was settling wherever you could, even if it was far away from home, and creating a sense of community together. One day, I was walking in the floral district on 28th Street between 6th and 7th, and I happened to see a single la'i plant. And I just stopped dead in my tracks and stared at it. I don't even know where I was going. I just was like, la'i. And it was probably Amazonian variety, I don't know. But I saw it and I was like, oh, gotta have that. I gotta bring it home. So I bought it and brought it back to our tiny cold apartment in Brooklyn and put it on the windowsill. And as fall turned into winter and it got really cold and we were shuttered indoors, that la'i grounded me. It reminded me of where I was from. It reminded me of the many stalks of la'i in my grandma's yard back in Kaneohe. It reminded me of the mana that I carried with me and all the ohana that came with me on this journey to, further my education and explore the world. So New York City also raised me because New York taught me the value of speaking up. I remember my first time I stepped into a deli, the butcher got super impatient with me because I didn't know how to order and I was very nervous and I was very timid. He's like, "Speak up!" And over time, I learned that, I had a voice. I had things to say. I had things to advocate for. I educated people about Hawaii and about Native Hawaiians. I educated that professor. I had meaningful things to advocate and address. It taught me the value of caring about the collective, in the sense that if you're walking on the sidewalk and you're moving slow and taking up the sidewalk, you're not aware of people around you and where they need to go. Get your bagel and step aside, right? Order, step back, right? Move to the right on the escalator. All these things I learned, but it made me start to care more about the world around me. I started reading the news, right? Global news. I started caring about politics and learning about the city and the government. And I just had this awakening of wow, there's this world outside of us that I really need to care about. New York also taught me the value of opening my mind. I lost count the number of languages I had heard on the subway. Jared and I were approached so many times by Latin folks like, "Ooh, you're one of us." And then they'd rap to us in Spanish and ask for directions somewhere. We're like, "Ah." And we tried to say, oh, no, sorry, we don't speak Spanish. And finally we had to learn, yo soy Hawaiian. So that they didn't think we were just snobby Puerto Ricans who didn't want to speak Spanish. But, my classmates shared perspectives, many of which were different than mine. I saw plays, I went to new cities, I learned new histories, and it just really had me open up my mind. I learned the value of protecting myself to keep safe, but opening up my mind to be free. When we moved back in 2010, it was to raise our son, and we had a really difficult choice. Many of my classmates who had moved to New York from the West Coast and other places decided after school to settle down in the suburbs and start their families there. And we could have done that. With our degrees, we could have gotten jobs and it, would have maybe worked. We could have exposed our son to the wonders of the big city. But we knew there was something so special about Kaneohe, so special about this place that was irreplaceable. We knew he had to be raised running around barefoot in the yard, chasing his cousins, getting the quinoa and the dobash, and smelling the puakenikeni every time he stepped out the front door. We knew that as much as our community needed us, we needed it. And so we made that difficult choice to move back. And so now I visit New York whenever I can. And I took my 3 kids. Where are they? Wave where you guys are. There they are, up in the top. I took now 3 of them. They multiply somehow. We took them to the city last year, and they just enjoy the sights and the smells and the sounds of the city, and they enjoyed riding bikes in Central Park and seeing Rockefeller Center lit up. They enjoyed eating bagels fresh out of the bakery and being able to hear and see the places where their mom and dad got nostalgic about being raised in our young adulthood. My son carries the name Lenox after Lenox Avenue in New York City, and he feels a connection back there. And I don't know if he'll go back, maybe he will someday, but what I am proud of and know is that they will always be grounded in this place of Kaneohe. So as I prepared to come home this week and I thought about my time there, I just felt really, really grateful. I felt grateful to New York for teaching me the value of exploring the world and opening my mind. And I felt grateful to Kaneohe for teaching me the value of exploring this place and of opening my heart. And I will always remain grateful to both places for being so special to me. Thank you.